On Christmas Eve, I arrived home unexpectedly. There she was, my daughter, trembling in the freezing 32-degree Fahrenheit chill, without even a cover to shield her. Meanwhile, my son-in-law's relatives were chuckling and clinking champagne glasses beside the roaring fire. I burst through the entrance, cradling my girl in my embrace, and uttered just 6 words, "Good to have you around." If this clip catches your eye, hit that like button, join the channel, and drop a comment sharing where you're tuning into my tale of payback from. Curious about its spread. I climbed out of the cab. My sturdy boots plunged into the deep snow blanket in front of my daughter's place in Boise, Idaho. The biting gusts whipped across my cheeks as if aiming to strip away my flesh, prompting me to hike up my jacket's neckline. Having spent years instructing Taekwondo, I figured I'd handled every trial. From the scorching dojo temps to the most brutal frosts. Yet this holiday night's frost had me quaking. I paused before the invitingly illuminated home, a blend of thrill and anxiety churning within. This day, my plan was to astonish Emily, to witness my young one's beaming grin as her mother appeared without notice. Following those long months apart, the front lawn lay smothered in white. No tracks anywhere, as if nobody bothered to shovel. Peering through the wide living room pane, the warm radiance poured forth amid merry holiday tunes from a wireless device. Jingle bells, her childhood pick, echoed through. I edged nearer, straining for a glimpse indoors. A lengthy spread, clad in vivid crimson linen, ran before my eyes, heaped with classic fare. A gleaming turkey fresh from the oven, hot trays of bread dressing, a dish of berry mix dotted with glossy apple chunks and dried fruit, plus wine stems sparkling in the glow. The Whitlock clan, Ryan's kin, filled the space completely. I spotted Mr. Harold Whitlock, his father, presiding with a commanding presence, and Mrs. Evelyn Whitlock, his mother, sipping from her goblet with a self-satisfied grin. Ryan's sibling Abigail joined them, along with her pair of lively youngsters giggling away. Everyone lifted their drinks in a cheer near the snapping hearth. But Emily, where was she? I scowled, peering deeper, wondering if she lurked in a hidden spot. In my mind, she beamed and bantered, reminiscent of earlier times when she'd loop her arms round my shoulders, spinning yarn after yarn. Suddenly, a soft cry drifted from the veranda. I spun around and my pulse halted. Beneath the faint glow by a frost-dusted holiday plant pot, Emily huddled on an aged rocker. Clad in just a flimsy top, her slender frame quivered wildly, tangled locks plastered to her brow from slushy melt. I dashed over, my chest thumping fiercely. "Emily," I called out, my tone cracking in alarm. I shrugged off my trainer's parka and draped it over her swiftly, my shaky fingers grazing her limb. It felt frozen solid, devoid of any heat. Emily raised her head, gaze bloodshot, ashen mouth murmuring scarcely, "Mom." The sound was so weak it nearly vanished on the breeze, and she slumped into me. I clasped her firm, sensing her frame jitter like a creature trapped in a gale. "I've got you, darling, right here," I murmured, aiming for steadiness despite the sting of tears. From my pack, I fetched a spare pullover and bundled her in it, hoping to lend some of my own body heat. Scooping her up, her drenched footgear tumbled into the drifts, marking a sloppy path. I pressed her near, detecting her shallow exhales on my skin. Right then, my sole urge was to whisk her away from that harsh freeze, from the ordeal that left her like this. Yet indoors, the mirth persisted, oblivious and harsh. Ryan's resonant tone rang clear, arrogant and crowing over who knows what. The group burst into guffaws, the toast chimes resembling far-off haunting notes. They reveled in comfort by the flames, while my child, my very own, shuddered in the outdoors as though unworthy of that roof. Mere hours earlier, I'd been at Boise's airfield, still damp from directing the country's Taekwondo squad for a full week. The arena's swelter clung to me amid the terminal's draft. I hauled my battered luggage, buzzing with anticipation, picturing Emily's expression igniting at my sudden holiday arrival. My pulse quickened. She had forever been my beacon, from toddler days when she'd hug my knees, pleading for another tale before sleep, evolving into a gentle adult whose grin eased my roughest stretches. But my role as lead instructor pulled me everywhere. Seattle events, big competitions, snatching brief reunions with Emily. Each departure, I'd promise myself, one final match, then time together. And now I arrived, eager for that holiday get-together I knew would light up her world. Parked in the terminal lounge, gearing up for the quick trip to the outskirts of Boise, I fished out my cell to ring Emily. I craved the sound of her tone, confirmation she was settled in. The line buzzed repeatedly, each ring ratcheting up my anxiety. No pickup. I scowled, figuring perhaps she was tied up whipping up the holiday feast alongside the Whitlock clan. I dialed once more, then again. Same result every time. Quiet. A knot of worry twisted in my gut, seeping outward like dye across a page. I fired off a message. "Mom's heading your way. You there?" I fixed my gaze on the display, hoping for those twin blue ticks. Zilch. I tried brushing away the chill of dread, telling myself she'd misplaced her device or lost track amid festooning the Yuletide pine, as she always did. We'd touched down in Boise under cover of night. I hauled my bag from baggage claim, and the chill of the season slapped me full force, burrowing into my bones. Loved ones embraced, chuckled, streaming toward the late-night service. A father hoisted his young daughter atop his shoulders. She clutched a striped peppermint stick, chortling with delight. I observed them, a tightness swelling in my windpipe. I'd borne Emily that way once, grasped her tiny palm amid avenues aglow with festive illuminations. Yet here I stood solitary, towing a cumbersome case, emerging from the terminal wrapped in an unnameable isolation. I hailed a cab and, voice raspy from fatigue, instructed, "Head to Meadow Creek on 12th Street. En route, the roads crawled, thronged with folks, swaddled in overcoats and mufflers, bound for the evening worship." I peered through the cab's glass at the cozy radiance spilling from homes lining the avenue. Distant peals from steeples blended with a chorus intoning "Silent Night" from some close-by spot. I grinned, imagining Emily bustling about the stove, crafting those creamy spuds she'd mastered from my recipe. At a red light, I peered out and noticed a cluster of officers managing the flow. There, amid them, was Jake, an old pupil from my taekwondo instructing stint at the neighborhood rec hall. He loomed upright, assured in his badge attire, yet retaining that familiar, gentle grin. I cranked down the pane and called out, "Jake!" He pivoted, his gaze sparkling as he placed me. "Miss Rose, you've returned," he burst, tweaking his duty hat. I beamed, masking my weariness. Indeed, wrapped up my sessions in Seattle, still patrolling Boise. Jake dipped his head, grin shining. "Affirmative, handling the roads these days. In town for the holidays with kin." "With Emily," I replied, a warmth blooming in my core at uttering her name. But Jake's expression stiffened, his cheer evaporated. A shadow of hesitation crossed his features, as if words teetered on his tongue yet stayed locked. An ominous spark ignited within me, fanning like an emerging blaze. "Everything all right, Jake?" "Issue?" I queried, softening my pitch. He wagged his head, mustering a grin. "Nah, nothing's amiss, Ms. Rose. Thrilled to see you home." Yet his stare revealed concern. I itched to probe further, but the signal shifted. The cabbie accelerated and we surged forward, Jake receding in the rear view, fingers clamped on his hat's edge. Approaching Emily's place, I had the driver halt just shy of the entrance. I aimed to startle them, catch her expression upon discovering me at the threshold. I seized my bag and trudged along the frost-dusted walkway, my footwear carving stark trails. The amber luminescence from neighboring dwellings flickered like votive flames. From afar, strums of a guitar and vocals drifted from Emily's front room. I curved my lips, envisioning her crooning as in childhood, planted beside me, warbling winter wonderland with her pure timbre. I propped my case on the stoop, inhaled steadily, and poised to rap. But a derisive cackle sliced the night, keen as a blade. I halted. My knuckles lingered inches from the wood. Mr. Harold Whitlock's resonant, gravelly timbre thundered distinctly. That's what they term a daughter-in-law, a lady baron of children, 4 losses. Aren't we shamed sufficiently? His guffaw rumbled low, laced with scorn. Then Ryan's tone, icy and biting, joined, forever simulating melancholy, barricading in her chamber to idle away. Without my folks say so, she'd be gone long since. Fresh mirth burst forth, punctuated by the ting of stemware. Abigail, Ryan's sibling, injected her spite. Precisely, utterly worthless. A spouse unable to bear young. Of what use? Feigning ailment for sympathy. Laughable. Every syllable pierced my soul. I remained rooted, numb. Air snagged in my larynx. This was their handling of my Emily, my girl who envisioned a joyful hearth, who invested her essence in dishes for her spouse. And now they mocked her thus. 4 losses, each shattering her into wordless sobs over our calls, accusing her of pretense. I balled my hands, nails biting flesh, and it was then that I spotted Emily, huddled in a rickety wooden seat on the veranda, wearing only a flimsy shirt, her face tilted down, her entire frame quivering in the biting chill. Tears clouded my vision. My pulse froze. I gathered Emily close to me. She was still shivering, her skin like a slab of frost. My fingers shook as well, not merely from the harsh, Boise evening, but from the fury igniting inside me. Every stride toward the Whitlock residence weighed like a ton. Yet I pressed on. I hammered at the solid entrance, my rap solid overpowering the holiday tunes blasting within. Jingle bells repeated endlessly, taunting the heartbreaking sight I'd just encountered. Nobody answered. I clenched my jaw and struck with more force, as if aiming to shatter the barrier in a single hit. At last the entrance creaked wide. Mrs. Evelyn appeared, clutching a goblet of crimson wine that swayed unsteadily, her mouth smeared with vivid lipstick, shining in the glow. Booze lingered on her breath, yet she plastered on a contrived grin, attempting civility. "Well, Ms. Rose, this is unexpected," she cooed, her words overly sweet but insincere, like I was an intruder. "You should have called ahead so we could prepare a proper welcome." I met her gaze steadily, my ire plain. "Called ahead," I snarled, the syllables seething past my lips. "If I'd done that, how would I have caught this? What have you done to my child?" I clutched Emily nearer, sensing her shallow breaths against my neck. Every inhale urged me not to back down. Evelyn arched a brow, eyeing Emily bundled in my grasp with a sneer, as if viewing an irritation. "Emily only stepped out for a breath of air," she murmured, her voice gentle yet dripping disdain. "No need to overreact, it's the holidays. Join us inside. Don't linger in the frost." Her remark stung like a sharp blow, a breath of air, while my girl nearly turned to ice in her scant top. Before I could retort, Ryan emerged from behind his mom, his top loosely fastened, radiating calculated indifference. He gripped a wine bottle and fixed me with a challenging stare. "Mom, shut it," he commanded, his speech thick with superiority, head held high. "Leave her out there until she calms down. Who crashes Christmas supper pretending to be delicate to dodge chores?" He uttered a derisive snicker, as though he'd dropped a gem. That remark twisted like a dagger, piercing not only me but Emily too. I sensed her form curl tighter against me, wishing to disappear. From the dining area, Abigail's shrill, poisonous tone pierced the air. "Precisely. A lady who can't even bring a child to full term. What good is she? Worthless." Her cackle sliced deep, blending with the low chatter from the others at the spread. I caught Abigail's pair of children, Emily's young relatives, dashing to the veranda, intrigued. They peered at Emily cradled in my hold, then tittered, muttering between themselves, "Aunt Emily's in hot water." Their childlike chatter scorched like acid on raw flesh. Heat surged to my cheeks in wrath. I shoved my shoulder against the entrance, then delivered a fierce boot to it. It burst inward, crashing into the wall with a thud that hushed the space. Evelyn's drink splashed, leaving dark blotches on the plush carpet. The festive soundtrack halted suddenly as if the cord had been ripped free. The room's vibe grew dense, oppressive, like the air itself had vanished. I advanced to the heart of the parlor, Emily secure in my embrace. My footprints trailed damp slush across the polished wood, indelible signs of my simmering wrath. All stares fixed on us. Mr. Harold, expression icy. Evelyn, her phony cheer vanished. Abigail, gaze loaded with scorn. The extended kin, blending surprise and irritation. Their animosity hung in every look, but it meant nothing to me. Gently, I placed Emily on the sofa, wrapping my wrap around her. Her palms remained numb, quaking as if the winter's grip lingered. I crouched, meeting her gaze, aiming to lend her my resolve, even as turmoil raged within, seething anger and grief. The Whitlock parlor gleamed with lights. Flames danced in the hearth, yet tension choked the space as if all awaited a burst. Ryan approached, cheeks flushed from drink, eyes sparkling with hubris. He dropped his tone to a chill murmur, still reeking of entitlement, like the domain was his alone. "You can't cause a ruckus here, Rose," he declared, stressing here to underscore my intruder status. Ryan loomed, hand akimbo, shirt agape in blatant disrespect. But a hint of doubt flashed in his stare. He realized I wasn't one to cower. I leaped up, jabbing a finger toward him, my words quivering with outrage. "Oh, really?" I barked. "And you believe it's fine to shove my daughter into the freeze, to risk her life in the cold?" Rage pounded in my veins. Each phrase burst forth like thunder. "Is that your idea of a spouse, of kin?" I scanned the laden feast table, dishes still warm, the wine. The spectacles of the guests gleamed with a taunting spark, as if reveling in Emily's torment. From his position at the table's end, Mr. Harold Whitlock stood up deliberately, smoothing his jacket while his powerful tone commanded the room. "That's sufficient, Ms. Rose," he declared. "This concerns our kin. A lady unable to conceive must simply persevere. Life demands it." His statement struck with brutal force, icy and merciless. I met his stare directly, recognizing the haughtiness of a long-time judge accustomed to dominating every situation. Yet on this occasion, he'd chosen the incorrect adversary. My eyes drifted to the spread before us, the succulent turkey emitting its savory scent, the cornbread dressing artfully plated, the wine shimmering beneath the chandelier. Then I turned to Emily, huddled on the sofa and quaking, her belly rumbling softly like a hushed protest. Restraint shattered within me. My words burst forth, fierce and incisive. "So you all indulge in this banquet while my girl freezes outdoors in 32-degree chill without a jacket or a morsel to eat. Is that your idea of custom, of compassion?" Evelyn merely lifted her shoulders, her grin frosty, dismissing my outrage as exaggeration. "A female incapable of bearing offspring remains useless, even with sustenance," she murmured, her tone laced with contempt. She lifted her goblet of wine and drank leisurely, signaling utter indifference to my anguish or Emily's plight. From her seat at the table, Abigail joined in, her words biting and aggravating the injury. "Your child forever hides behind her melancholy to shirk responsibilities," she remarked. "Over the years, has she prepared even one proper dish for us? She just lounges in her room complaining, pulling the entire Whitlock clan into her misery." Abigail rolled her eyes in derision, as though Emily were an intolerable load on the family. Whispers among the kin escalated into a buzz. A few nodded solemnly, while others chuckled softly, endorsing the poisonous rhetoric. Each noise, Each furtive look stabbed at my core like fresh wounds. Urge surged to overturn that ornate dining setup, clamoring for fairness on behalf of my child. But a weak murmur arose from the sofa. Emily, my precious one, had roused herself. She struggled to prop herself upright, her shaky fingers clutching the cushion. "I'm utterly exhausted," she whispered, her speech faltering and faint. "Nobody comprehends." Her plea was swiftly drowned by Ryan's roar. "Stop it!" he snapped. "Be quiet. You've humiliated me plenty." He advanced on her, his expression frozen in hostility, intent on demolishing her remaining resolve. Witnessing Emily's posture sag and her swollen eyes well up with moisture wrenched my spirit. I positioned myself between them, prepared to shield her by any means. A torrent of recollections about Emily overwhelmed me. I recalled those evenings when she'd phone me in tears, voice cracking over the line. Each lost pregnancy, the initial one, then the next, the third, the fourth, had fractured her essence further. Once a joyful young woman envisioning a cozy household filled with shared suppers alongside her spouse and little ones, the relentless grief had driven her toward utter hopelessness. I'd strive to support her, despite the miles separating us through those distant conversations. Yet I could never have foreseen that the Whitlock household, whom I deemed reliable, would subject my daughter to such barbarity. Ryan, the man I'd once viewed as honorable, now revealed his authentic nature. A heartless tormentor who'd banished my girl into the frost, discarding her like refuse. Control slipped from my grasp entirely. Beyond the glass, Jake lingered quietly on the veranda. Perhaps he'd been keeping watch over the area, his stern expression and balled hands revealing he'd overheard and observed the malice. I offered him a subtle gesture, urging restraint for the moment, yet his nearness brought a glimmer of reassurance. I realized isolation wasn't my reality. An ally stood ready, one who grasped the facts. Ryan pressed forward once more, jabbing a finger my way and shedding any pretense of civility. "Consider this your caution," he growled. "This home is mine. Keep clear, or the fallout will intensify." A smug curl twisted his lips, certain that the Whitlock influence would force my retreat. He misjudged me badly. My hands balled tightly, joints popping, as a lifetime of suppressed fury ignited right then. The atmosphere hung heavy, primed for the slightest provocation to erupt into flames. I fixed my gaze on Ryan, my reply hushed, yet edged like a blade. "Do you believe intimidation works on me? That you can inflict more pain on my daughter unscathed? You're mistaken, Ryan. I won't allow this to slide." Swiveling toward the assembled Whitlocks, from Mr. Harold's unyielding scowl to Evelyn's subtle sneer to Abigail's scornful pout, I addressed them all, my declaration booming in the hushed space. "Every one of you will face consequences for the harm inflicted on Emily." The Whitlock parlor plunged into an ominous quiet, the oxygen seemingly drained, replaced by a coiled strain on the brink of detonation. I rested my palm on Emily's back, sensing her delicate build beneath the wrap, my tone firm and resolute. This ceases to be an internal affair. It's outright spousal mistreatment. My declaration rippled outward like a pebble, disturbing calm waters, affecting each person present. In the living room, Evelyn gripped her wineglass tightly and unleashed a derisive chuckle, twirling the liquid as if savoring some private amusement. "Abuse," she sneered, her voice laced with contempt and haughtiness. "We're merely showing her where she belongs, Rose. You ought to be grateful we've tolerated her for so long." Ryan advanced, his gaze bloodshot from booze and fury. He hurled his accusations like venom, grinding out each syllable with deliberate malice. "She's pretending to be depressed, inventing suffering to avoid any effort. No one's laying a hand on her. We're simply exhausted by her worthlessness." He halted, fixing me with a warped grin. "Remind your girl of her lessons, Rose. No one endures 4 miscarriages consecutively. Perhaps she arranged it herself." Those remarks sliced like shards of glass. They didn't merely wound my soul, they ripped apart Emily's raw scars. I caught her sharp intake of breath, as if she'd taken a blow to the gut. 4 losses, 4 occasions when she'd phoned me in tears, her words fractured, mourning the babies she'd never cradle. Each instance, I'd gripped the receiver, powerless across the distance, offering hollow reassurances. And here was Ryan, bold enough to face me and claim she'd orchestrated it. My fingers balled into a fist, nails biting into flesh, heat flooding my cheeks. He'd shattered an unbreakable boundary. I fished my phone from my jacket. My fingers trembled, yet I swiftly punched in the number for the local precinct. "I'm summoning the authorities," I declared, my tone glacial, even as turmoil raged within. "A complaint will be lodged. You'll face justice." I drove home each syllable, etching them into the space, ensuring no one doubted my resolve. Ryan stiffened. The bottle tumbled from his grasp, crashing against the polished wood, crimson liquid soaking the lavish carpet. Alarm flickered in his stare, despite his bid to reclaim his smug demeanor. "You wouldn't!" he bellowed, though his shout quivered, caught off guard by my determination. Mr. Harold, observing with icy detachment, moved ahead, straightening his necktie, his gravelly timbre thundering with command. "You haven't a clue whom you're defying, Rose," he warned. "Decades on the judicial seat have exposed me to humanity's darkest corners. Do you believe a mere dial will intimidate us?" His gaze pierced like daggers, underscoring that the Whitlock clan bowed to no one. Yet, I held firm. I'd witnessed my child trembling in the chill, and no authority, not even Mr. Harold's sway, would muzzle me. Abigail rose from the dining area, folding her arms, a scornful smirk playing on her lips. "By all means, dial away, Miss Rose," she mocked. "We'll observe whose account they credit, a deranged elder or our esteemed lineage. You imagine law enforcement will champion you." Her poisonous cackle echoed, assured of my downfall. Emily, huddled on the sofa, clutched my sleeve, her murmur quaking. "Mom, don't. I crave only calm." Her tear-streaked eyes brimmed with dread, conveying her horror that matters might escalate. I met her gaze, my chest twisting in sorrow. I understood her terror of the Whitlocks' reprisal of fresh degradations heaped upon her. But yielding now would condemn Emily to endless torment. I clasped her palm firmly, channeling my resolve into her. "Fear not," I murmured, steady and gentle. "I'll safeguard you. That's my vow." I hoisted her into my embrace, flakes of snow from her attire drifting to the floor like fragments of a broken illusion. I disregarded the Whitlocks' disdainful scowls and whispered menaces. My sole focus was extracting her from that den of torment, that brutal confinement she'd endured far too long. As I pivoted toward the exit, I spotted Jake beyond the misted window, poised on the veranda, his palm on his communicator, his stare ablaze with suppressed intensity, primed to intervene. I offered a subtle incline of my head, signaling my preparedness for confrontation. Jake responded with a resolute dip, his fingers still clamped on the device like an oath of solidarity. I strode forth without glancing rearward. Trailing me came Evelyn's shrill commands to the maid about mopping the wine-soaked mat. Ryan's palm smacked the surface, a profanity under his breath. Then Mr. Harold's resonant growl resounded as he reached for his line. Those noises struck like barbs in my spine, but they meant nothing. I ferried Emily to my modest flat close to the National Training Center, my long-standing home as a trainer. It lacked grandeur, a modest parlor with a worn settee, a basic cooking nook, and scattered snapshots of kin adorning the walls. Still, it served as a refuge, a barrier against the Whitlocks' barbs and the biting frost. I bore Emily to her chamber and eased her onto the mattress. She quivered yet, enveloped in my heavy jacket. I rummaged in the wardrobe for a faded pullover, draped it over her, then brewed a steaming cup of cocoa, its warm scent permeating the drafty space. "Sip this, darling," I coaxed quietly, settling the cup in her grasp. But she merely gazed at it, her expression vacant as if she lacked the will to even try. I couldn't fathom why anyone would deny her even the slightest kindness. My phone buzzed, interrupting my reverie. It was Jake. His tone came through low and resolute. "Ms. Rose, I've submitted the preliminary statement down at the precinct, but the Whitlocks aren't going to yield without a struggle. They hold a lot of sway. You're aware of that. Count me in to serve as a witness if it comes to that." The resolve in his words struck me like an enduring spark. Jake, my former pupil, the kid who'd once trained in the dojo with eager enthusiasm, was now standing with me in this new confrontation. "Assist me in getting ready, Jake," I responded, my reply concise, yet laced with appreciation. "This might drag on for a while." He shot back with a straightforward, "Understood, Coach. Count on me." The following day, I brought Emily to a counselor located in the heart of Boise. Dr. Linda Carter, a mature lady with a compassionate look, invited us into her warm study. Following her session with Emily, she turned to me. Her expression somber and weighed down. "She's grappling with profound depression, Miss Rose. The toll of 4 miscarriages, coupled with relentless belittling from her husband's family, has shattered her self-assurance. What she requires is recovery time, therapy, and most importantly, a sense of security." I acknowledged her assessment, my chest constricting. I'd sensed Emily was struggling, yet the professional's confirmation hit like yet another wound. Glancing at her huddled in the seat, fingers intertwined rigidly, I faulted myself for arriving too late to shield her. Later that day, Jake visited the flat in civilian clothes, bearing a sack of fresh produce and a few vintage recipe books. He placed them before Emily, pausing uncertainly. "I recall your passion for the kitchen," he mentioned. "Figured easing in with something basic, say a tart or hearty broth, could lift your spirits a touch." His delivery was soft, though concern etched his features. Emily dropped her gaze, fingers twisting her shirt's hem, and whispered, "Appreciate it, but I doubt I have it in me for anything these days." Her remark stabbed at me sharply. Jake's expression dimmed briefly, yet he refrained from pressing, offering only a subdued nod. He positioned the items on the counter and addressed me. "Ms. Rose, anything you require, speak up. I've got your support." That evening, once Emily had drifted off, I settled at the dining area beneath the faint glow. Amidst the scattered documents, a sound from beyond caught my ear, followed by a hefty packet slipping beneath the entrance, stealthy as a veiled warning. I tore it open. Within lay a scrawled message, the script erratic. "Stay out of Whitlock affairs unless you wish to suffer like your girl. Back off." Rage surged through me as I scanned the lines. I balled up the sheet and hurled it forcefully into the bin, the impact shattering the quiet. Such intimidation didn't daunt me, it only steeled my resolve. They assumed I'd retreat. They misjudged me. Right then, I began compiling every record of funds I'd forwarded to Emily across the years. Transaction slips from the bank, texts infused with my affectionate remarks. Each item stood as testimony to my ongoing efforts to aid her. Despite Ryan and his relatives wasting the bulk of it, those documents evoked poignant recollections. The instances when Emily reached out, her tone unsteady, seeking cash for household items, only for Ryan to dismiss the necessity. I clutched the writing tool until it almost cracked. I'd placed faith in Ryan, believed he'd cherish my child, but he'd merely exploited her, casting her aside callously once her value waned. In the dead of night, Emily stirred and shuffled from her space, limbs unsteady, spotting me at the table, immersed in the files, my gaze weary yet shadowed by apprehension. "Mom," she uttered softly, her words fracturing, "I'm terrified, worried they'll harm you." I lifted my eyes, noted her tear-streaked face, and sensed my core twisting. Rising, I approached and enveloped her, sensing her delicate frame against mine. "No need for fear," I assured her steadily, despite the turmoil churning within. "Going forward, I'll shield you from it all. That's my vow." I guided Emily back to her room, lingering until slumber claimed her. Sleep eluded me, though. I resumed at the table, continuing to organize the materials and drafting a plan of action. I contacted a longtime attorney acquaintance who'd assisted with a matter involving the martial arts group. He agreed to review it, but cautioned, "The Whitlocks wield considerable influence in Boise, Miss Rose. They've got connections in the judiciary. Brace for an extended conflict." I agreed, even unseen. "I understand," I replied, "but I won't yield." Those preparation weeks unfolded like a perpetual ordeal. Each evening, in the subdued radiance of my modest dwelling, I pored over sheet after sheet, scrutinizing bank statements and health records concerning Emily anew. Those stark figures and words served as validation of my devotion to my child, while also underscoring the agony she'd endured. At last, the trial's opening arrived, and I approached it as if entering the sparring ring once more. Emily and I stepped into the Boise Justice Building. The dawn's chill penetrated my heavy jacket. I clasped her hand, noting her chilled digits quivering within my grasp. Her gaze was puffy with shadows from restless evenings. She averted it, as if yearning to vanish from the ascending steps. I held my ground, aiming to be her pillar of support even as turmoil churned within me. "I've got you," I murmured softly, clasping her fingers with care. She gave a faint dip of her head, yet those vacant stares revealed she'd surrendered the battle ages before. The Whitlocks had arrived ahead of time. Ryan, clad in a crisp gray suit, exuded the poise of a seasoned attorney. Prior to the proceedings, he settled into his seat, straightened his necktie, and cast a disdainful look our way. Beside him ambled Mr. Harold, moving at a measured pace but with eyes piercing like daggers. He offered a smug grin, as if the result was already in his pocket. In their family section, Evelyn and Abigail perched upright, attired in refined outfits, murmuring now and then, while directing hostile glares at us. Their animosity radiated through every motion, yet I compelled myself to remain composed, recalling that this day belonged to Emily, not me. Jake had shown up as well, positioned in the observer's area in his officer's attire. He offered a subtle acknowledgement, his resolute eyes conveying a vow of unwavering loyalty. His being there eased my isolation, like having a steadfast partner amid the fray. I returned the gesture, wordlessly expressing gratitude for his support from that harrowing Christmas Eve right up to now. The hearing commenced. My attorney, Mr. James, rose and laid out the exhibits with precision. He displayed the financial transactions I'd forwarded to Emily across the years, demonstrating my ongoing aid, despite much of it funneling into Ryan's control. He also introduced her health documents, complete with therapist observations on her depressive state. Following 4 lost pregnancies and relentless barbs from her spouse's relatives, Emily endured more than bodily harm, James declared, his tone heavy with feeling. They regarded her as an intruder within her household. I glanced toward Emily, her chin lowered, fingers intertwined as if to contain the anguish. The urge to rise and embrace her surged through me, but I recognized the need to hold firm and allow the counsel to proceed. Then the junior advocates for the Whitlock side took the floor, and a sense of unfairness seeped into the chamber. One, dressed in a polished black ensemble, addressed the court with authoritative tone. "Emily's merely pretending to be ill for sympathy," he claimed. "The Whitlocks provided her with all, housing, meals, every requirement fulfilled, yet she fell short on her responsibilities. She underperformed as a spouse." Those statements struck me like a blow, pretending for sympathy. My grip tightened until rage pulsed hot in my veins. They summoned a witness, Mrs. Martha, once the Whitlocks' domestic helper. She approached the platform, her gaze flickering, delivery unsteady. Mrs. Emily was indolent, she testified. She'd barricade herself in her bedroom for hours, ignoring household tasks. I ended up handling it all, preparing food, tidying up. I could scarcely trust what I heard. Emily, the very person who crafted heartfelt dishes and baked family-favorite pastries, now labeled idle. I leaped up, restraint shattered. That's untrue. Emily never acted that way. The presiding judge, a man in his 40s with a severe expression, banged his gavel and intoned sharply, "Order in the court!" I resumed my seat, pulse thundering, breath caught in my throat. I eyed Mr. Harold Whitlock. He smirked, delivering a discreet, triumphant tilt toward the bench. Their unspoken connection sent a shiver across my flesh. The setup felt off. I sensed it distinctly. They'd orchestrated this moment, and I was merely a piece on their board. Emily remained curled forward, quivering palms clutching the armrest. I spotted Jake in the rear seats, teeth gritted, knuckles white, as if wrestling his own outrage. Mr. James persisted, his delivery unwavering. We seek to introduce vital proof, an audio from Christmas Eve, documenting the Whitlock clan's belittling and mental torment of Emily. He activated the tape that Jake had covertly captured. Ryan's tone echoed, icy and harsh. She's inventing melancholy to shirk obligations. Evelyn's followed. A barren woman, no matter her diet, serves no purpose. Abigail's dripped mockery. She can't even deliver a child. The room hushed. Only soft murmurs pierced the quiet. I turned to Emily, watching her recoil as though freshly wounded by the barbs. But the opposing counsel sprang forth, protesting. That tape breaches the law, obtained sans permission. It infringes on personal boundaries. The judge inclined his head, response curt. The evidence is excluded. The floor seemed to drop away, and I gripped my seat to avoid tumbling. That tape, the starkest testament to the Whitlocks' malice, discarded over a procedural flaw. Whispers swelled throughout the space. A few inhaled sharply in shock. Others nodded in bewilderment. I caught Jake's eye, his face downcast, hands quaking against his thighs. Emily buried her features in her palms, frame shuddering while she stifled sobs. The impulse to erupt, to charge the dais and insist on fairness, overwhelmed me. But I realized equity eluded us in that hall. Mr. Harold lounged calmly, his stare composed yet haughty, as though he'd anticipated the turn. I pressed Emily's hand, attempting to lend her fortitude, even as despair weighed on me. Following 7 days of exhausting sessions, the ultimate ruling arrived. I perched in the Boise. In the courthouse, I clutched Emily's icy, shaking hand in my own. Throughout the entire week, I'd forced myself to remain composed, yet each evening in my cramped apartment, a wave of torment and powerlessness gripped my chest. Emily perched next to me, her eyes swollen from endless insomnia, her complexion ashen as if vitality had been sapped away. I held on tight, attempting to lend her some resolve, even as my own body quivered. Ryan entered with purposeful steps, fiddling with his necktie as if this were routine. His mother, Evelyn, adjusted her skirt and positioned herself rigidly, her lips coated in bold crimson, a self-assured grin suggesting she anticipated victory. Abigail, dressed in something ostentatious, cast a disdainful glance our way. Mr. Harold loomed behind Ryan, his presence commanding, eyes steely, underscoring how the Whitlock clan always dictated the terms. Jake occupied a seat among the observers, still clad in his officer's attire. His stare was resolute, though concern flickered beneath. He offered a subtle inclination of his head, a wordless vow of support regardless of the result. I responded with an appreciative gaze, drawing solace from his nearness. Yet as the judge, a man in his 50s with a stoic demeanor, stepped in, a shiver coursed through me. Tension thickened the atmosphere, as if all awaited an unavoidable decision. The judge addressed the room, his tone flat and authoritative. The court approves the divorce petition from the petitioner, Emily Harper Larson, against the respondent, Ryan Whitlock. That declaration ignited a spark of optimism within. Emily dissolved into quiet weeping, rivulets tracing her face. I pressed her hand, encouraging poise as she absorbed the rest. The split was precisely what I hoped for her, a path out of the Whitlock's oppressive grasp. Still, I sensed this wasn't the conclusion. The judge pressed on, his delivery as dull as a memo. That said, the court rejects the allegations of spousal mistreatment owing to lack of adequate proof. Regarding property division, given Ryan Whitlock's greater financial input during the union, the court allots him the bulk of joint holdings. The pronouncement struck me like a blow to the ribs. I stiffened, air trapped in my lungs. No validation for the abuse. Proof deemed wanting. Flashes returned. The audio from Christmas Eve, the vicious remarks from Ryan, Evelyn, and Abigail dismissed on a procedural flaw. Emily's health files, transaction logs, all contorted by the Whitlock's legal team to undermine our case. Clarity struck suddenly. Mr. Harold, leveraging his judicial history and connections, had orchestrated the bias. I glanced his way, noting the faint cock of his head, that arrogant smirk lingering. It was predetermined. They'd engineered the decision, treating Emily and me as mere pieces in their scheme. Restraint shattered. I surged upright, my words fracturing with fury and sorrow. This is utterly unjust. This defies fairness. My outburst reverberated, hushing the space. Emily seized my arm, her expression frantic, yet I pressed forward. You witness their cruelty toward my girl. You listen to her suffering, yet claim no mistreatment occurred. You strip her of it all. An officer neared, tone unyielding. Madam, resume your seat, or I must escort you out. I fixed him with a fierce stare. Then the judge, whose features remained impassive, as if my plea registered nowhere. I sank back, fingers quaking, the ground seeming to dissolve underfoot. Ryan pivoted, met my eyes, and delivered a taunting grin, straightening his tie in celebration of conquest. Evelyn and Abigail exchanged prods, stifling chuckles that pierced audibly. That snickering sliced into me like a blade. Mr. Harold inclined his head deliberately, his look serene, as though this were simply another matter he'd influenced. I scanned them individually, rage surging through my veins. They'd robbed Emily not only of equity, but eroded my trust in a framework I'd believed impartial. Emily shielded her features with her palms, her frame convulsing, stifled cries ripping at my core. I yearned to envelop her, assure her solace awaited, but silence choked me. The judge's decree replayed in my mind like a condemnation, for her, and now, inescapably, for me. From the rear, Jake rose sharply, scowling at the Whitlocks. I caught the cord straining in his neck, knuckles white as he restrained an outburst. I gestured for restraint despite my own urge to shatter the chamber. The judge struck the gavel, command crisp. Quiet. Proceedings concluded. You are free to depart. The sharp crack marked an endpoint for others, but for me, it heralded fresh torment. Attendees stirred, whispers rising, documents rustling. I remained rooted, embracing Emily firmly, her shuddering form and whimpers fracturing my spirit. Comfort eluded me, my voice trapped as platitudes failed against this wound. The biased verdict hadn't merely deprived Emily of resources, it eroded the final thread of my conviction that justice would safeguard her. Ryan approached leisurely, exuding arrogance from his triumph. He bent toward my ear, murmuring derisively, "You see, Rose, I warned you. Don't resist. You're nothing but a futile elder." He bared a lopsided smirk, gaze alight with success. Then he spun around and stormed off as if Emily and I meant nothing to him. His cutting remarks only fueled the blaze of my anger. My pulse raced wildly, veins throbbing with heat. I gripped my hand into a tight ball, the pain sharp in my knuckles, my frame tensed like a bowstring pulled taut, on the verge of breaking. I ached to charge ahead and slam my fist into that smug expression, to settle the score for all the harm he'd inflicted on my girl. Years training in Taekwondo had drilled discipline into me, yet right then, every wall I'd built came crashing down. I advanced a pace, chest hammering, poised for an action I'd forever rue. But Jake darted ahead, blocking my path, his stare fierce, mouth pressed in a line, knuckles white as if set to swing at Ryan. I recognized my own boiling wrath mirrored in him, a raw fury against the unfairness of it all. The courtroom hummed with murmurs, chatter swelling. Is a brawl about to erupt? An officer swinging in session. Folks whipped out devices, bursts of light capturing the strain. A reporter off to the side lifted his lens, gaze eager for drama. Ryan pivoted, caught off guard briefly, then his boldness returned. He flashed an icy grin. "Come on, take a swing. I'll ensure you end up with zilch. Who are you kidding? Just some petty badge wearer." He edged nearer, provoking, convinced Jake lacked the nerve to strike. Jake's hand shook, breaths coming in ragged gasps, gaze bloodshot. I sensed he teetered on the edge of something unforgivable. Abruptly, Emily slipped from my hold, dashed to Jake, and latched onto his side, tears flowing, her words fractured. "Stop, I beg you. I can't bear for you or Mom to sink to his level. All I crave is calm. All I want is to carry on existing." Her plea sliced the atmosphere, hushing the space. Tears traced paths down Emily's cheeks, her slender fingers clutching Jake as her sole lifeline. Jake halted, heaving for air, the blaze in his eyes gradually fading. His grip quivered, locked stiff for an instant before easing open and falling limp. He dipped his chin, jaw clenched, battling the storm raging inside. Shutter snaps rang out, lights etching the scene of Emily holding fast to Jake, Ryan looming self-satisfied ahead. A few observers, perhaps strangers to the saga, started weeping quietly. A gentle wave of sniffles spread, as if Emily's anguish had struck them deep. I scanned the crowd, one lady dabbing at her eyes, a fellow nodding in dismay. Yet the Whitlock crew remained stone-faced. Evelyn and Abigail murmured between themselves, faint smirks curling their mouths. Mr. Harold gave a subtle dip of his head, his commanding presence unshaken, as though the chaos was all scripted. The judge banged his gavel sharply, tone icy. "Quiet down. Any more of this and security will empty the hall." That crack pulled the room back to order. I moved up, gathered Emily close, and enveloped her in my embrace. She sobbed on, her form quaking against me like a frightened kid. Jake lingered nearby, shoulders slumped, mouth set firm, as if he faulted himself for holding back. I rested my palm on his back, offering a soft incline of my head to show I got it and appreciated his support. Ryan straightened his collar, pivoted, and strode away, footfalls laden with victory. Evelyn and Abigail trailed him, their chill chuckles twisting like a fresh wound in my gut. The space cleared out bit by bit until only the three of us remained, a trio bound by the same sour knot of defeat lodged in our gullets. I drew Emily nearer, sensing her faint exhales on my neck. "Mom," she murmured, her tone cracking, "no more battles. I'm worn out. Can we head home now?" That plea shredded me inside. I longed to assure her it had all turned right, that I'd press on, but my voice caught, words trapped. I guided Emily from the chamber, Jake matching our pace in silence, his look resolute. Dim Boise light filtered in from the panes, yet it failed to thaw the chill in my soul. I realized the verdict that day went beyond defeat. It signaled battle lines drawn. The Whitlocks might have claimed the legal ground, but I refused to let them claim Emily's world. I gazed at her, spotting a faint gleam in those swollen eyes, a whisper of optimism no matter how dim. For that glimmer, I pledged to endure. In the wake of the hearing, Boise hummed with subtle shifts. Local reports began to chime in, striking banners splashed across papers, Whitlock case, verdict for sale. Spotting those phrases, my heart thumped as if they echoed our shared torment, Emily's and mine. Online, footage of Emily grasping Jake amid the uproar went viral swiftly. That shot of my child, gaze inflamed, plea trembling, imploring Jake against sinking low, stirred countless souls. Replies poured in, brimming with indignation. The Whitlocks believe they own it all. Emily merits far more than this mess. Perched in our modest flat, poring over those messages, a sliver of solace eased in, even as the bench had shunned us. Folks' outcry was tilting toward Emily. The Whitlocks, for all their courtroom triumph, started paying a price. Whispers among Mr. Harold's former peers spread tales of his sway twisting the scales. Ryan, now tagged the attorney of inequity, drew barbs across the web. The family's boasted status eroded fast like a beach fort battered by tides. I didn't gloat over it, yet I sensed a spark of fairness, not from the legal system, but from ordinary folks speaking up. I welcomed Emily into my modest apartment, where soft amber light from the lamps created a cozy atmosphere, and snapshots of our family adorned the walls. Every dawn I'd rise at first light to prepare her morning meal, perhaps fluffy pancakes drizzled with syrup, or simply fluffy eggs alongside buttered bread. Emily would ease into her seat at the table, nursing a steaming cup of tea, her gaze drifting toward the window where pale rays of sun peeked through the rooftops of Boise. On certain days, I'd notice quiet tears tracing paths down her face, much like gentle rain. Still, I could tell Emily was gradually mending. Day by day, she shared a bit more, and her eyes held a touch less void than earlier. I never pressured her. I simply remained close, a parent poised to guard her child against any turmoil. Jake soon wove himself into our daily routine. He'd drop in, occasionally carrying a modest bunch of poinsettias or fresh pastries from the nearby shop. His arrivals would brighten Emily's mood slightly, as if his company served as a balm for her spirit. One afternoon, Jake approached her hesitantly and offered a little box. Nestled within was a keychain mimicking a taekwondo outfit, the very emblem I'd shown him and my other pupils. "Strength doesn't come all at once," he murmured, his tone gentle yet resolute, "but you can rebuild gradually, just as Ms. Rose showed us." Emily grasped the keychain, momentarily still, her eyes glistening with feeling. She bit her lip to stem the sobs, then gave a tentative nod. "Thanks," she breathed, her words faint but laced with sincerity. From afar, I observed quietly, a burden easing from my heart. For so long, Emily had endured diminishment, labeled worthless. But now, another person recognized her inherent value, cherishing her for her essence rather than her accomplishments. I looked aside, brushing away a tear from my face, unwilling to let Emily witness my own fragility. That night, as twilight painted the room in golden hues, Emily perched opposite Jake on the sofa. Her chin dipped low, fingers fidgeting with her sweater's hem, her speech quivering. "Jake, I may never bear children, if that lets you down." She trailed off as if dreading the words might shatter their bond. I lingered in the kitchen, feigning dishwashing duties, yet my pulse froze, hanging on Jake's response. He offered a kind, unwavering grin, clasped her hands, and met her gaze directly. "Emily, that's not what I seek. You are my family already." His statement washed over me like a soothing breeze, dissolving the chill that had settled inside, leaving warmth in its wake. I absorbed them with a tightness in my throat, vision misting over. Emily had faced years of shame, branded a flawed spouse for her childlessness. Yet here was validation that she sufficed, entitled to affection simply for existing. I averted my eyes, allowing silent tears to flow, my soul brimming with unspoken thanks. When Easter arrived, I clasped Emily's hand and strolled through Boise's Central Plaza, reminiscent of her childhood romps along illuminated avenues. The area buzzed with the joy of playing children and the aroma of newly baked pastries from vendor booths. Emily donned an airy cardigan, her locks pulled back, and for the first time in ages, a genuine smile graced her features, a beaming one under the vernal sunshine. "Mom," she murmured tenderly, "I long for those times, like when you guided me in baking apple pie or shared tales of your taekwondo bouts." I grinned, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Me too, darling, and I'll forever stand ready to craft new moments alongside you." As we rested on a rustic bench, observing youngsters frolic near the fountain, a deep realization dawned on me. Legal justice might bend under influence and wealth, but the equity of emotions, affection, dignity, endurance, remains untouchable. Though Emily had forfeited much, she was rediscovering her core, inch by inch, moment by moment. And I, once a mother gripped by helplessness, now understood my truest power lay not in dojo strikes, but in the boundless devotion to my girl. Jake appeared bearing a sack of piping hot churros, passing one to Emily as they chuckled and conversed like longtime companions. I gazed on, my spirit swelling with optimism. The wounds inflicted by the Whitlocks might linger in Emily's memory forever, but she was beginning to advance, to embrace her worth, to welcome those who genuinely appreciated her. And at 65, having weathered countless struggles, I realized that battling for Emily's joy held the deepest significance. This tale is imagined, yet inspired by authentic events. Identities and settings have been altered for privacy. We offer it not to condemn, but to encourage reflection on the quiet anguish so many mothers endure within their walls. I'm truly interested. If you stood in my position, how would you respond? Remain quiet for harmony's sake, or boldly confront it to rediscover your own voice? Share your thoughts. Each narrative is a beacon that might guide another. May blessings abound. I hold steadfast that bravery paves the way to sunnier tomorrows. Meanwhile, toward the video's close, I've included links to 2 fan-favorite channel tales. They'll captivate you, guaranteed. Appreciate you sticking around to the